I opened the banking app and saw 0 hours. My 7-year-old genius granddaughter said, "It was Dad. I can prove it." I felt like the kitchen floor had opened up beneath my feet and swallowed me whole. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if you feel, even for a second, that this sounds familiar, I just ask that you hit like and subscribe. It will help me keep venting and getting this off my chest. My name is Eleanor Ellie Miller. I'm 68 years old, and for my entire life, I've lived right here in Astoria, Queens, in the heart of New York City, in this sturdy brick tenement home, where the old wisteria vines climb the patio wall that my late mother planted, and the smell of strong black coffee brewing mixes with the constant roar of Northern Boulevard traffic. Here, within these peeling, sky-blue painted walls, I built an entire life, a life I believed was solid as old granite. That October morning, while I was brewing coffee on the gas stove we bought 15 years ago, because my $180 weekly pension doesn't stretch to modern luxuries, the doorbell rang. It was my son, Robert Rob, with my granddaughter, Vivian Vivi. He was, as always, in a rush. His immaculate Ralph Lauren shirt contrasted sharply with my faded apron, stained with last night's sauce. "Mom, we're dropping Vivi off this week. Tiffany and I have to fly down to Miami for business." "You aren't doing anything important anyway, are you?" His words landed on my heart, like stones in a quiet pool, creating ripples of pain that spread to the deepest corners of my being. Vivian, all 7 years of her, with those big honey-colored eyes she inherited from my side, carried a large princess-themed backpack. Her crisp white Nikes, which cost more than my weekly food budget, were a stark contrast to my tired, worn-out Skechers. She hugged my legs while her dad already headed for his white BMW, double-parked beside my small 2006 Ford Focus that barely runs. "Don't forget to give her those vitamins," I shouted toward the car as it sped off. Tiffany didn't even turn around. I just saw her perfect silhouette adjusting her genuine leather seatbelt while she talked on the phone about crypto investments and stock market returns. That evening, after we ate grilled cheese sandwiches and a simple salad, bought at the local Key Food store, because Vivi loves them and it was all I could afford for two, I decided to check my bank account. I wanted to see how much I had for the rest of the week's expenses. Vivian was playing on the living room floor with her tablet, drawing with an app while I struggled with my old cell phone, a basic Android that Rob had given me 3 years ago, saying, "So, you're not so disconnected from the modern world, Mom." I entered my PIN with trembling fingers. I always struggle with these technological things. The screen loaded slowly, and when the balance finally appeared, the world stopped. 0.0000. I closed my eyes. I opened them. I closed the app and logged in again. Maybe it was a system error. Maybe the bank was having technical problems. Maybe my tired eyesight was playing tricks on me. But no. There it was. $0. 0 cents. 43 years of savings evaporated like the steam off the coffee cooling on the table. "Grandma, why are you crying?" Vivi's voice reached me from far away, as if she were speaking from the bottom of a well. "I'm not crying, sweetheart," I lied, wiping the tears slipping down my wrinkled cheeks. "Just got something in my eye." But Vivi is a smart child, too smart for her age. She came closer to me with that seriousness that sometimes frightens me in kids today, as if they know things they shouldn't. "Is it because of the money that disappeared?" she asked, climbing onto my lap like she did when she was smaller. My heart stopped. "What do you know about the money, sweetie?" I saw Dad. Her words were like knives. He was on the computer, on a page that said, "Bitcoin Casino." He had pictures of your debit cards on his phone. "I heard him tell Mommy that you would never find out because you're too old to understand that stuff." The air grew thick, unbreathable. The faint smell of gas from the stove mixed with the rising nausea in my stomach. My savings. My money. The wrinkled bills I used to hide in an old shortbread tin under my bed. The coins I collected in an old Folgers coffee tin. The $200 I saved every month from my pension, sacrificing medications, sacrificing food, sacrificing everything to have something for emergencies. All gone. And not by unknown thieves, not by a mugging on the street, not by an anonymous bank fraud. It had been my own son. The same boy I rocked in my arms when he cried from hunger. The one I carried on rickety buses to free medical clinics. The one I defended when teachers complained about his behavior. The one I applauded when he graduated college with a finance degree. A degree I paid for by selling my wedding jewelry, one piece at a time, until I was left only with my wedding band. Rob had used my data, my cards, my trust, to gamble on online casinos, to invest in bitcoins and cryptocurrencies he didn't understand, but that promised to make him rich quickly, to finance a life of luxury that included trips to Miami while his mother stayed home eating canned beans and counting pennies. "Vivian," I said, my voice cracking, "can you show me what else you saw?" With the natural ease of a generation that grew up with technology, she took my phone and navigated to the photo gallery. Her small fingers moved with a dexterity I would never possess. She showed me screenshots, photos of screens, accidentally recorded videos. It was all there. The huge transfers, the loans requested in my name, the lost bets, the investment returns that never materialized, my liquid assets converted into red numbers, into debts I didn't know I had, into financial commitments signed using my identity as collateral. As the child patiently explained what she had seen, I felt my soul slowly tear apart. It wasn't just the money. It was the betrayal. It was knowing that for my own son, I wasn't a mother worthy of respect, but a stupid old woman who could be robbed without consequence. It was discovering that my unconditional love had been repaid with a calculated cruelty that took my breath away. That night, after tucking Vivian into my bed, because I didn't have an extra bed and my granddaughter needed rest, I sat in the kitchen until dawn, staring at the walls I knew by heart, listening to the nighttime sounds of the city that saw me born, wondering how I had raised a man capable of destroying his own mother for money. The wall clock I inherited from my grandmother ticked away the hours, like a metronome accompanying the rhythm of my broken heart. And in that painful silence, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be the silent victim of my own family anymore. The next day, I woke up with my body aching, as if I had been beaten all night. Dry tears had left salty tracks on my cheeks, and my swollen eyes could barely open. Vivian was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at me with that serious expression that broke my heart. "Grandma, you don't have money to buy food anymore?" she asked with the brutal honesty of children. "Of course I do, sweetie," I lied again, checking my purse. I had exactly $12 in cash. That was everything I had until next Friday when my pension arrived. "We're going to have something delicious for breakfast." But while I prepared scrambled eggs with the last 3 eggs in the refrigerator, my mind couldn't stop churning over everything I had discovered. Every movement in the kitchen reminded me of the years of sacrifice. I bought this stove working as a domestic helper on the Upper East Side and Park Slope, cleaning houses for women who earned in a day what I made in a month. I vividly recalled Rob coming home from college complaining that his classmates had better sneakers, better backpacks, better phones. "Mom, it's embarrassing to say my mom is a maid," he told me once, when he was 20. Those words stabbed me in the chest like thorns, but I never held them against him. Instead, I worked double shifts, cleaned more houses, humbled myself by asking my employers for advances just so I could buy him what he demanded. When he married Tiffany, a girl from a well-off Manhattan family whose father owned an import company, I thought my son would finally have the life he always wanted. But the demands didn't stop. They grew like a poisonous plant. "Mom, we need the down payment for the condo. It's a secure investment. Real estate always goes up," he had told me 2 years ago. Sitting at this very table where I was now eating breakfast with Vivian, I gave him $15,000 of my savings. Everything I had put together by taking on extra tailoring and alterations jobs on weekends for 5 years at the local community park. "I'll pay you back in 6 months, when my boss gives me the bonus," he promised. He never mentioned that debt again. When I asked him, he would change the subject or get angry. "Don't you trust me? I'm your son, not a stranger." Then came the investment opportunity in tech company stocks. "Mom, this is going to make us all rich. It's like buying Apple stock in the 80s. The stock market is booming." Another $8,000. My emergency medical fund, for the day I couldn't work anymore, so I wouldn't be a burden. Then the cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is revolutionizing the financial world, Mom. People who don't invest now will be left behind. It's your chance to multiply your capital, $5,000 more. My fund to repair the roof that leaked every rainy season. And so, little by little, my son had emptied my account with promises of massive returns that never arrived. Each time with more urgency. Each time with fewer explanations. I just need you to transfer this, Mom. It's an opportunity that can't wait. I'll explain later. While Vivian ate her eggs, I checked my phone, trying to better understand what had happened. With my granddaughter's help, I managed to access the transaction history. What I saw took the little air I had left. The transfers hadn't started 2 years ago. They had started 4 years ago. Small amounts at first, $200 here, $300 there. So small that I had mistaken them for my own expenses or calculation errors. But they grew, like a silent cancer that feeds on your body without you realizing it until it's too late. "Look, Grandma," Vivian said, pointing at the screen. "It says Dad took out $3,000 the day of my birthday party." The day of her birthday. When I arrived at the party with a homemade chocolate cake because it was all I could afford, while Rob and Tiffany had organized a celebration in an upscale venue in Scarsdale with clowns, bouncy castles, and a dessert table that cost more than my monthly rent. That day he had told me in front of all the guests, "Thanks, Mom, but we already ordered the cake from the high-end bakery. We can use yours for the staff." The staff. As if I were less than the other parents who had come to celebrate my granddaughter. "Grandma," Vivian's voice pulled me from my dark thoughts. "Is Dad bad?" The question pierced me like a bullet. How do you explain to a 7-year-old girl that her father, the man who was supposed to protect and love her, had stolen from his own mother? How do you tell her that the money he used to buy her expensive sneakers and toys came from the life savings of a 68-year-old woman who ate beans just to give him everything? Your dad? He makes mistakes, sweetheart. Like everyone. But inside me, a quiet fury began to grow. It wasn't just the money. It was the systematic humiliation, the derogatory comments in front of Tiffany and her friends. My mom doesn't understand these modern things. She's from another generation. She knows nothing about finance. The way he spoke to me as if I were a silly child, as if my 68 years of experience were worthless. I remembered last Christmas when I arrived at their house with gifts I had bought at the local discount store. Nice clothes, but not designer labels. Cute toys, but not from the expensive stores in Santa Fe, adapted to the high-end malls. Tiffany's look of disdain when she unwrapped the blouse I had bought her. "Oh, Eleanor, how unique. Thanks." And Rob laughing. "Mom, next time just give me the cash and I'll buy something they actually like." The cash he was stealing from me. Throughout that week, while I took care of Vivian, I discovered more things. My granddaughter, without realizing the seriousness of what she was telling me, revealed conversations she had overheard between her parents. "Dad tells Mom you're very easy to trick," she told me one afternoon while drawing at the kitchen table. "He says you believe everything he tells you about investments. What else does your dad say about me? That when you die, the house will be his, and he's going to sell it to buy a bigger one in Manhattan. That he already talked to a lawyer to sort out the paperwork. My house, my parents' house, the house where I was born, where I raised my son, where I thought I would die in peace. He had already sold it in his mind, as if I were a temporary inconvenience in his prosperity plans." That night, after Vivian fell asleep, I sat on the patio under the wisteria vines my mother planted 40 years ago. The purple flowers looked dark under the moonlight. For the first time in my life, I felt something I had never experienced toward my son: hatred. A deep, visceral hatred that burned my insides like acid. He hadn't just stolen my money. He had stolen my dignity, my future, my peace of mind. He had turned me into a victim in my own life, but I also felt something else. A cold, calculated determination growing in my chest like a blue flame. Rob thought he was smarter than me. He thought he could manipulate me because I was just an ignorant old woman. He thought my motherly love was blindness, that my kindness was stupidity. He was in for the shock of his life, because this ignorant old woman had just learned something very important. When you have nothing left to lose, You are free to do anything. When Rob and Tiffany returned from Miami, they arrived with that golden tan that only five-star resort vacations provide. She carried a new designer handbag that surely cost more than my entire year's pension, and he wore a white linen shirt that screamed, "money," from afar. My 68 years of reading people told me they had spent a fortune on that trip. My fortune. "Mom, how was Vivi?" Rob strode into my house as if it were his own, without knocking, without proper greeting. He went straight to the refrigerator and poured himself water into one of my good glasses, the ones I keep for special visitors. "Miami was incredible. We stayed at the Four Seasons. Can you imagine? Ocean view, top-notch service, international food." Tiffany stayed at the entrance, checking her phone with perfectly manicured nails that shone like tiny mirrors. She didn't even look at me when she mumbled, "Hello, Eleanor," as if greeting the woman who had cared for her daughter for a week was an added bother to her busy day. "How was everything, Mom?" Rob finally addressed me, but still didn't really look at me. His eyes scanned the house as if evaluating if anything had changed, if anything was missing. "Did Vivian behave? She didn't give you any trouble?" "Everything was perfect," I replied with a smile that strained my facial muscles. "We're very good friends, aren't we, sweetie?" Vivian hugged my legs without saying anything. In that week, we had developed a silent complicity. She knew that I knew. And I knew that she would protect me in her own way, as only a child who loves her grandmother more than her own comforts can. "All right, Mom, we're heading out now. Rob has a very important meeting tomorrow with some Japanese investors," Tiffany announced, finally putting her phone away in that bag worth more than my house. "They're interested in the real estate project in the Riviera Maya. We could make millions if it goes well." Millions. The word hung in the air like toxic smoke. Millions they were going to make with investments funded by my stolen money, my life savings, the pennies I had collected from extra tailoring jobs under the relentless Sunday sun. "That's good, son," I managed to say. "I hope you have great luck." "Luck has nothing to do with it, Mom. This is financial intelligence, market strategy, things you wouldn't understand." His condescending tone scratched my nerves like sandpaper. "That's why it's better if I handle these complicated matters." After they left, I stood in the doorway watching the BMW drive away down the cobblestone street where I had played as a child. My neighbors' houses looked small and humble compared to the life my son now led, a life paid for with my sweat, my sacrifice, my blind, motherly stupidity. That afternoon, I decided to do something I had never done in my life, truly investigate where Rob had spent my money. With the help of Mrs. Carmen, my neighbor who had been a secretary in an accounting office for 30 years, I managed to better understand the bank statements I had printed at the corner internet cafe. "Oh, Eleanor," Mrs. Carmen said, adjusting her glasses to review the papers. "These aren't investments. These are pure expenses. Look, transfer to Bet365, charge at Online Casino USA, Amazon purchase for $2,500. This boy is blatantly robbing you." The figures danced before my eyes like malevolent numbers. $3,000 on a single night of sports betting. $1,500 on a dinner at a high-end restaurant in Manhattan whose name I couldn't even pronounce. $800 on a bottle of Scotch whiskey. $600 for a couple's massage at an exclusive spa. "And what is this?" Mrs. Carmen pointed to a transfer for $5,000 to an account called Phoenix Investments, LLC. I looked it up on Google. Phoenix Investments turned out to be a phantom company that promised 300% returns in 6 months by investing in cryptocurrencies and precious metals. A pyramid scheme that had been shut down by the Securities and Exchange Commission 3 months after Rob sent them my money. My son hadn't just robbed me. He had robbed me to lose the money in scams and bets. He was worse than a common thief. Thieves at least use what they steal. Rob had thrown my entire life away out of sheer greed and stupidity. "Eleanor, you have to report him," Mrs. Carmen said, gripping my hand with her wrinkled but firm fingers. "This is a crime. It doesn't matter that he's your son." But I knew things weren't that simple. Who would believe me? A young district attorney who would see a confused old woman accusing her successful son? A judge who would think it was a family problem and not real fraud? Besides, technically, I had given him access to my accounts. I had signed papers without reading them because I trusted him. I had authorized transfers because I believed his words. Over the next few days, something strange began to happen to me. My feelings cooled, like water that stops boiling and turns to ice. I no longer cried. My hands no longer trembled when I thought about what I had lost. Instead, a cold clarity settled in my mind. I started observing everything with new eyes. When Rob called me, I no longer heard my son asking for help. I heard a con artist rehearsing his next move. When Tiffany spoke to me with that superiority disguised as affection, I no longer saw my daughter-in-law. I saw an accomplice who knew perfectly well where the money for their luxuries came from. "Mom, I need another favor," Rob said one afternoon, showing up at my house without notice. "It's an incredible opportunity. Some American investors want to put capital into the Mexican market, but they need a local guarantor. It would only be $6,000 for 3 months. "6,000? I asked in a quiet voice. "Yeah, Mom, but it's a safe investment. I'll double it back to you in 3 months. I already talked to the notary, you just need to sign some papers." I looked at him in silence. His tanned face, his hair styled with expensive gel, his watch gleaming on his wrist like a small fortune, all paid for with my money, all built upon the foundation of my blind trust and unconditional love. "I don't have $6,000, son," I told him. "What do you mean you don't?" "Mom, you have to have something put away. You always have money hidden somewhere." "It's gone." His smile vanished like smoke. "Gone how?" "I don't have any more money, Robert. It's gone." For the first time in years, I saw real panic in his eyes. Not sadness for me. Not concern for my well-being. Panic because his funding source had just dried up. "But Mom, this is important. It's a unique opportunity. We could be truly rich." "We could." The word left my mouth like venom. "Or you could." "Well, obviously you'd benefit too. You're my mother." At that moment, looking at his desperate face because he could no longer raid my savings, I made the most important decision of my life. I was no longer going to pretend I didn't know what he had done. "Robert," I said with a voice I didn't recognize as my own, cold and firm as tempered steel, "I know exactly what you did with my money." Rob's face changed in seconds. First surprise, then panic, then that fake smile he had perfected since childhood when I caught him in some mischief. But now he was 35, and his mischief had ruined his own mother's life. "What are you talking about, Mom?" "I don't know what you mean." He ran his hand through his hair nervously, the gesture he made when he was lying since he was 5. "I know about the online casinos. I know about the cryptocurrencies. I know about Phoenix investments. I know everything, Robert." His mask completely collapsed. For a few seconds I saw the frightened child he once was, but that image quickly faded, replaced by something worse. Aggression. "Look, Mom, calm down. You're confused. Those were legitimate investments I made with your money, but for your benefit. Everything I do is to secure our future." "Our future?" I stood up from the chair, feeling a strength I didn't know I possessed. "Which our? You have a new house, a new car, vacations in Miami. I have $12 in my purse and canned beans for dinner." "Mom, you're being dramatic." $45,000, I shouted with a voice that echoed throughout the house. "That's what you stole. $45,000 that took me 40 years to save." Rob recoiled as if I had slapped him. He had never heard me yell like that. He had never seen me break the image of the suffering, silent mother I had built for decades. "It wasn't stealing, Mom. It was a loan. I was going to pay everything back when the businesses started yielding fruit." "A loan?" I laughed, but it was a bitter laugh that came from the depths of my soul. "A loan without my permission? A loan betting my money in casinos? A loan spending my savings on bottles of whiskey that cost more than my monthly pension?" The door burst open. It was Tiffany, who had heard the shouting from the car. "What is going on here?" she asked, with that authoritative voice she used when she wanted to control the situation. "Your husband stole all my money," I told her, without taking my eyes off Rob. "And you knew it." Tiffany crossed her arms and looked at me as if I were a lunatic escaped from the asylum. "Eleanor, don't be ridiculous. Robert invests his money as he sees fit. Nobody stole anything from him." "His money?" The fury rose in my throat like volcanic lava. "His money?" I earned that money cleaning houses. I earned it taking on extra tailoring jobs under the sun. I earned it sewing clothes until 3 in the morning just so I could buy everything this ungrateful man asked for. Mom, keep your voice down, the neighbors will hear, Rob muttered, glancing toward the street. Let them hear, I shouted even louder. Let the whole world hear that my son robbed me. Let them hear that he left me penniless after I gave him everything. Mrs. Carmen peered out her window. Mr. Roberto, the mechanic from the garage, came out onto the sidewalk with greasy hands. Several neighbors started coming out, attracted by the scandal. In this neighborhood, where everyone has known each other for decades, a shout like that was almost a historical event. Eleanor, control yourself, Tiffany hissed through clenched teeth. You're making a fool of yourself. Making a fool of myself? I turned toward her with a fury I didn't know I possessed. Do you know what's ridiculous? That while you bought that $2,500 handbag, I was eating beans all week. Do you know what's ridiculous? That while you went to Miami with my money, I didn't even have enough to buy cough medicine for my granddaughter. Tiffany's face turned red. You are crazy. Robert, let's go. We're not going to listen to this nonsense. But Rob was calculating something in his head. I knew him too well. He was looking for a way out of the problem, to turn the situation to his advantage. Mom, sit down. Let's talk about this like civilized adults. No, my voice was firm, definitive. I won't sit down. We are not going to talk as if this were a normal discussion. You stole from me, Robert, and I'm going to report it. Report it? He laughed nervously. To whom? The DA's office? Mom, you gave me access to your accounts. You signed the authorizations. You asked me to manage your finances because you didn't understand those things. He was right in part, and that hurt me more than anything else. It had been my blind trust that made this theft possible. My motherly love had become my own undoing. Besides, Tiffany added with a cruel smile, who is going to believe a senile old woman who doesn't even know how to use a cell phone? The judges will think you're confused, that you don't remember things correctly. Those words were like a slap in the face. Senile old woman. For years they had made me feel exactly that. A confused elderly woman who didn't understand the modern world, who needed to be guided, who needed to be protected from her own ignorance. Maybe, I said slowly, I don't understand bitcoins or investments. Maybe I don't know how to use every app on the phone, but I know perfectly well when I'm being robbed. Mom, nobody robbed you of anything. Shut up! The shout came from a place so deep within me that even I was startled. Don't talk to me like I'm stupid. I'm 68 years old, not 6. I've lived longer than you. I've worked harder than you. I've suffered more than you. Vivian appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. She had been in the backyard, but the shouting had frightened her. Why are you yelling? She asked, with that small voice that broke my heart. Tiffany immediately changed her attitude, shifting into maternal mode for the gallery of neighbors who had already formed. Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. Grandma is just a little upset, but she'll be fine. Then she looked at me with venom in her eyes. See what you're doing? You're traumatizing the child with your tantrums. Tantrums. As if discovering that the savings of a lifetime had been stolen was a childish tantrum. Vivian, I said, bending down to her height, do you remember what you showed me on the phone? What you saw your dad doing? The girl nodded, but looked at her parents fearfully. Vivi, don't listen to Grandma. She's confused, Rob said quickly. I am not confused, I replied, standing up and looking directly into my son's eyes. I am clearer than I have ever been in my life. Rob exchanged a glance with Tiffany. It was a quick look, but I saw it. A look of complicity, of strategy. They were planning something. Mom, Rob said with a suddenly sweet voice, I think you've been very stressed lately. Maybe you should see a doctor. We could make an appointment with a specialist, someone who can help you with these episodes. Now my legitimate pain was a psychiatric episode. Yes, Tiffany added, feigning concern. We've noticed you've been very forgetful lately. Sometimes you say things that don't make sense. Maybe it's time to consider other care options. The message was crystal clear. If I kept causing trouble, if I kept inventing stories about theft, They would find a way to declare me mentally incompetent. They would put me in a home. They would take my house. They would finish destroying everything that remained of my life. But there was something they didn't know. This senile old woman had just learned that when you have nothing to lose, you have all the power in the world. "You know what, son?" I said with a calm that surprised even me. "You're right. Maybe I should see a doctor." Rob and Tiffany exchanged a look of relief. They thought they had won, that they had intimidated me enough to make me back down. They didn't know they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. "Perfect, Mom. I'll make you an appointment tomorrow with a very good psychiatrist Tiffany knows. It will help you a lot." "No, son. I'm going to see my regular doctor. Dr. Ramirez at the local health clinic, the one who has known me for 20 years. The smile slightly faded from Tiffany's face. "But Eleanor, that doctor is very traditional. Private specialists have better treatments for these memory issues." "It's fine," I said, taking Vivian's hand. "By the way, I think Vivi is very tired. Why don't you go rest? We'll talk later." I dismissed them with a smile that hurt my cheeks, but which must have looked convincing. When the BMW drove away down the street, Mrs. Carmen immediately crossed the patio separating our houses. "Eleanor, are you okay? I heard terrible shouting." "Better than ever, Carmen. Can I ask you a very big favor?" Early the next day, Mrs. Carmen and I got on the subway at the Astoria Boulevard station. She carried a plastic folder full of all the papers we had organized the night before. Bank statements, screenshots, the video Vivian had accidentally recorded, all printed and chronologically ordered. Our first destination was the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, a government office downtown where young officials deal with people like me every day. "Good morning," I said to the receptionist, a girl who couldn't have been more than 25. "I'm here to report financial fraud." They assigned me to an advisor named Mr. Lopez, a man in his 40s with a tired but kind face. I explained the entire situation while he took notes on his computer. "Mrs. Miller," he said after reviewing all the documents, "there are indeed very serious irregularities here. The transfers were made from different devices, at times when you weren't present according to the testimonies you present. And above all, the amounts are very high for the expense profile you usually manage." "What does that mean?" "It means we have grounds to open a formal investigation. I'm going to generate the corresponding report, and we will send it both to the bank and to the specialized unit of the district attorney's office for financial crimes." Carmen squeezed my hand. It was the first time in weeks that I felt someone was taking me seriously, that someone believed my version of events. "Mr. Lopez," I asked, "what if my son says I gave him permission to use my money?" "Ma'am, giving permission to manage money is very different from giving permission to gamble it in casinos or invest it in fraudulent companies. Furthermore, even if there was verbal authorization, the amounts and frequency of the transactions suggest abuse of trust and possible fraud." We left the CFPB with a folder full of official seals and case numbers. But our day had just begun. The next stop was the health clinic where Dr. Ramirez has been treating me for 2 decades. An older man, with gray hair and wrinkles that speak of years attending to the workers in this part of the city. "Eleanor, good to see you." He greeted me with the warmth that only familiarity brings. "How have you been? You look worried." I told him the whole story. Everything. From discovering the theft to the veiled threats of having me committed for mental problems. The doctor listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding. "Eleanor," he said when I finished speaking, "I'm going to run some complete tests. Blood analysis, neurological exam, basic psychological evaluation. Also, there is proof that you are perfectly sound of mind. Will that help if they try to?" "It will help a lot. I am a licensed physician with 30 years of experience. My testimony carries legal weight. And Eleanor, I've known you since you came here pregnant with Robert. You have never had a single symptom of cognitive decline. On the contrary, you have always been one of my most lucid and organized patients." While waiting for the test results, Mrs. Carmen and I went to a notary public. It was a small office, run by a young notary who had inherited the practice from his father. "Counselor," I said, "I want to make some changes to my important documents. First, I revoked all powers of attorney I had given Rob over the years. Powers to collect my pension when I was sick. Powers to handle bank paperwork. Powers I had signed just in case something happens to me. All canceled. Second, I named Vivian as my sole beneficiary in case of death, with Mrs. Carmen as the executor until my granddaughter reached the age of majority. Third, and this was the most important, I made a detailed will explaining exactly what had happened to my money, with dates, amounts, and evidence. A legal document that would be recorded forever, no matter what might happen to me. Counselor, I asked the notary, if someone tried to declare me mentally incompetent, would this will still be valid? Ma'am, to invalidate a will due to mental incapacity, they would have to prove that you were already ill when you signed it. But I am certifying today, with my public seal, that you are completely lucid and aware of all your actions. That will be very difficult to rebut. The next day, very early, my phone rang. It was Rob. Mom, how did you wake up? Are those weird ideas from yesterday gone yet? Good morning, son. I'm very well, thank you. I'm glad to hear you're calmer. Hey, I got you an appointment with Dr. Salinas for Friday. She's a psychiatrist specializing in older adults. She'll help you a lot with those confusion issues. That's thoughtful of you, Robert. By the way, were you able to resolve that $6,000 investment you mentioned? Oh yeah, Mom. Luckily, I got the money from some partners. I don't need to bother you anymore. Lie. I knew it was a lie because Carmen had been watching his house since early morning. Rob had left at 7 a.m. and gone straight to a pawn shop in Brooklyn. He had pawned his watch. The one he always boasted was worth more than my car. That's good, son. I'm glad you solved it without having to ask me for money I no longer have. There was silence on the other end of the line. Rob was processing my words, trying to understand if there was sarcasm or if I was truly resigned to my situation. Exactly, Mom. Better this way. You concentrate on taking care of your health. When I hung up, I stared at the phone for several minutes. All my life I had hoped my son would mature, that he would realize the harm he was doing to me, that he would feel even a little remorse for his actions. Now I understood that would never happen. Rob was not a confused son who had made mistakes. He was a predator who had identified his easiest prey, his own mother. And he would continue to feed on me until there was nothing left, or until I did something to stop him. That afternoon, as I organized all the official documents I had obtained, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Power. Not the power to hurt or take revenge, but the power that comes from truth, from preparation, from knowing exactly where you stand. Rob thought he had me controlled with threats and psychological manipulation. He didn't know that while he had been pawning his watch, I had been building a rock-solid legal case. The war had just begun, but for the first time, I had the right weapons to fight it. Friday arrived faster than I expected. Rob appeared at my house at 9 a.m., punctual as a clock, dressed in a gray suit that surely cost more than my 3 months' worth of groceries. He had that fake smile he had perfected for important occasions. Good morning, Mom. Ready to go see Dr. Salinas? Of course, son. I put on my blue shawl, the one my mother wove before she died, and grabbed my handbag where I carried all the documents I had obtained during the week. Documents Rob didn't know existed. Dr. Salinas's office was in a glass tower in a high-end commercial district, one of those modern buildings where every minute of consultation costs what I spent in a week. The waiting room had cream leather sofas and decorating magazines that showed houses I couldn't even dream of. Mrs. Miller, a young nurse in an impeccable white coat, called out. The doctor will see you now. Dr. Salinas was an elegant woman in her 50s, with perfectly styled hair and designer glasses that probably cost more than my annual pension. Her office had framed diplomas on the walls and a panoramic view of the city that constantly reminded you who held the economic power here. Mrs. Miller, please sit down. Your son mentioned you've been having some episodes of confusion lately. Episodes of confusion? I asked, feigning innocence. Yes, he says you've been making unfounded accusations, that you've been aggressive, that you seem not to remember certain financial transactions correctly. Rob was sitting next to me, nodding with that worried son face he had rehearsed in front of the mirror. Occasionally, he took my hand with a feigned delicacy that made me nauseous. Doctor, he said in a shaky voice, it's very painful to see my mother like this. She was always a very lucid, very organized woman, but lately, I don't know. It seems like she lives in another reality. Your concern is understandable, the doctor replied, taking notes on an expensive tablet. Can you give me specific examples of these behaviors? Well, a few days ago, she accused me of stealing money from her. She says I used her savings to bet in casinos and buy cryptocurrencies. Completely absurd things. And do you manage your mother's finances? Yes, doctor. She asked me to help her because she feels overwhelmed by modern banking technologies. Everything is perfectly documented. The doctor turned to me. Mrs. Miller, do you recall giving your son that authorization? Of course I remember, I replied calmly. I gave him permission to help me with some banking paperwork. What I do not recall is giving him permission to gamble my life savings in online casinos. Rob squeezed my hand harder. Mom, we talked about this. Those were legitimate investments in high-yield funds. High-yield funds? I took out my purse and started reviewing the papers I was carrying. Like Bet365? Like Online Casino USA? Like Phoenix Investments that turned out to be a pyramid scheme? Rob's face paled. The doctor raised her eyebrows, clearly interested in this new information. Mrs. Miller, the doctor said, do you have documentation of those transactions? Of course. I handed her copies of the bank statements I had printed, all with official seals from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB. I also have the report of the investigation that financial authorities have already opened. The doctor reviewed the papers for several minutes while Rob shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His face had gone from a healthy tan to a sickly gray color. Doctor, Rob stammered. My mother sometimes prints things from the internet and believes they are official documents. You know how older people are with technology. Mr. Lopez from the CFPB, the doctor said, reading the signature on one of the documents. I know this official. He is a very serious and respected person in the financial sector. I took another paper from my purse. I also have here the results of my complete medical evaluation from Dr. Ramirez. Neurological exams, blood work, psychological evaluation, everything normal for a person my age. Mom, Rob tried to interrupt. Dr. Ramirez is a general practitioner from a public health clinic. He's not a geriatric specialist like Dr. Salinas. You're right, I said, taking out another document. That's why I also went to the neurologist at Mount Sinai Hospital. Dr. Fernando Mendoza. Do you know him, doctor? Dr. Salinas almost choked on her coffee. Dr. Mendoza? He's an eminence in geriatric neurology. You were evaluated by him? Yesterday afternoon. Here is his report. I handed her the most important paper of all, a document on official Mount Sinai Hospital letterhead where Dr. Mendoza certified that all my mental faculties were completely intact. Rob was speechless. His perfect plan was crumbling before his eyes like a house of cards in a hurricane. Dr. Salinas, I continued, my son brought me here because he wants you to certify that I am crazy. He wants to have me committed so he can take my house and finish stealing what little I have left. Mrs. Miller, the doctor placed the tablet on her desk. Based on the documentation you present and the coherence of your speech, I find no evidence of cognitive decline or mental health issues. But doctor, Rob protested, no longer concealing his desperation. You don't understand. My mother is inventing all of this. I would never rob her. Young man, the doctor's voice turned ice cold. I believe the only one here who needs psychological evaluation is you. Your behavior during this consultation has been completely inappropriate. I rose from my chair with all the dignity I could muster. Dr. Salinas, thank you very much for your time. Robert, let's go. Throughout the drive back, Rob didn't say a single word. He drove with white knuckles gripping the steering wheel, his jaw clenched, his breathing shallow. I rode in silence, watching the city pass by the window, feeling for the first time in months that I had recovered something fundamental. My dignity. When we arrived at my house, he finally exploded. What the hell do you think you're doing, Mom? Taking care of what I have left, I replied, without getting upset. You don't have anything left. All that money is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. I know that perfectly well. That's why I'm taking steps to ensure it doesn't happen again. Rob slammed the car door and followed me to my house door. Neighbors had begun to peer out, attracted by his shouting. You're crazy if you think I'm going to let you ruin my reputation with this nonsense. You ruined your reputation all by yourself when you decided to rob your own mother. I didn't rob you of anything. Then give me back my $45,000. He fell silent. For the first time in the conversation, he had no answer. You can't, I continued, because you spent it. On bets, on luxuries, on trips, on that rich life you like to live with someone else's money. Mom, I'm going to pay you back. I just need time. The businesses are growing. The investments are going to pay off. I don't want you to pay me back anything, Robert. What? I don't want your money. I don't want your promises. I don't want your lies. I just want you to leave my life and not come back until you come and beg for my forgiveness on your knees and with a real plan to return what you stole from me. Are you kicking me out? I am setting you free. Free from the burden of having a mother who, according to you, doesn't understand anything. Free from the responsibility of caring for a senile old woman. Free from the bother of pretending you love me. Rob looked at me as if he didn't recognize me. Maybe because for the first time in my life, he was not in control of the situation. If you think you're going to emotionally blackmail me, you're very wrong, he said, his voice trembling. I'm not blackmailing you. I'm telling you the truth. You are no longer welcome in this house until you come back and ask for my forgiveness, and with a real plan to return what you stole from me. He turned and walked toward his car. Before getting in, he turned back one last time. You'll regret this, Mom. Without me, you are nothing. Without you, I replied, I can finally be myself. After Rob left, I stood in my doorway, watching his BMW disappear down the street. The neighbors who had come out to watch slowly began to disperse. But Mrs. Carmen approached with a worried look. Eleanor, are you okay? I heard terrible shouting. I'm perfect, Carmen. For the first time in years, I'm perfect. That night, I slept better than I had in months, without the burden of lies, without the anguish of pretending I didn't know what was happening, without the constant fear of being the next victim of my son's investment opportunities. For the first time in a long time, my house truly felt like mine, but my peace lasted exactly 3 days. On Tuesday morning, while watering the wisteria on the patio, I heard the doorbell ring insistently. It was Tiffany, but not the usual elegant, controlled Tiffany. This version had messy hair, red eyes as if she had been crying, and was wearing a wrinkled blouse she had clearly slept in. Eleanor, we need to talk. Good morning, Tiffany. How are you? How do you think I am? Her voice had a hysterical tone I had never heard from her. Do you know what you've done? Do you know the trouble you've put us in? I put you in trouble? Interesting perspective. Your report to the CFPB reached the bank. They have frozen all our accounts. We can't access our money. Your money. The question came out with more sarcasm than I intended. Are you referring to the money Robert stole from my accounts? That money was already invested. It was part of our working capital. Robert had pending deals, financial commitments. I sat down on one of the plastic chairs on the patio and invited her to sit. Tiffany was so rattled she accepted, even though she normally refused anything in my house, considering it unhygienic. Tiffany, explain something to me. If that money was legitimately yours, why did the bank freeze it when I presented proof of fraud? Because banks are bureaucrats. They freeze everything until the investigation is resolved. Exactly. And while the investigation is resolved, they will discover that my son used my personal information to make transfers without my real authorization. They will discover the casino bets. They will discover the investments in phantom companies. Tiffany covered her face with her hands. When she removed them, I saw something I had never seen in her. Genuine fear. Eleanor, you don't understand. Robert owes money. A lot of money. We had committed the cash in the accounts to pay off some very serious debts. What kind of debts? Loans. For the businesses. For the condo. For... She stopped, as if she had realized she was saying too much. For what else, Tiffany? For credit cards. For the private lenders who financed some investments. Private lenders. In the neighborhood where I grew up, we all knew what that meant. People who lent money at sky-high interest rates and used collection methods that didn't appear in any official contract. How much do they owe? $350,000. The figure dropped between us like a bomb. $350,000. almost 8 times what Rob had stolen from me. Tiffany, are you telling me my son spent my savings to help pay off $350,000 in debts? Not just that. He also borrowed more money using his future income as collateral. But now that the accounts are frozen, he can't prove he has the liquidity to pay. And what do you want me to do? Drop the report. Talk to the bank. Say it was all a misunderstanding. I stared at her for several seconds. This woman who had treated me with disdain for years, who had made me feel like a burden, like a useless, ignorant old woman, was now in my backyard asking me to save her husband from the consequences of his own actions. No. What do you mean, no? I am not dropping anything. Rob got himself into this mess. He can get himself out. Eleanor, you don't understand. If we don't pay in 2 weeks, they are going to come for us. They'll take the condo, She stopped again. But this time I pressed her. They'll what, Tiffany? They'll hurt us. The silence that followed was heavy as lead. I finally understood the magnitude of the problem my son had gotten himself into. These weren't just bank loans or normal financial troubles. There were real private collectors, dangerous people, waiting to collect $350,000 that Rob didn't have. Tiffany? Is Vivi safe? For now, yes. But Eleanor, these men don't play games. When someone doesn't pay them, they collect however they can, with whatever they can. Did Rob know what he was getting into when he borrowed that money? Of course he knew, but he was sure his investments would work. He had found an opportunity in the foreign exchange market, an automated trading system that promised 500% returns in 6 months. 500%? I couldn't help but laugh, but it was a bitter laugh. Tiffany, anything that promises 500% profit is a scam. It was a legitimate company, with offices in Las Vegas, with testimonies from millionaire clients. And where is that money now? Tiffany lowered her head. It disappeared. The company closed overnight. The offices were empty. The phones were disconnected. My son had lost $350,000 of borrowed money to dangerous loan sharks in a scam so obvious that even I would have spotted it. And now he expected me to save him from the consequences. Eleanor, Tiffany's voice was barely a whisper now. I know we made mistakes. I know Rob was wrong to use your money without permission. But please, think about Vivian. Think about your granddaughter. There it was. The ultimate emotional blackmail. Using my granddaughter as a shield to protect her parents' bad decisions. Tiffany, where is Vivian now? With my parents, in Naples, Florida. You sent her away for her safety? Yes. Then you already know how serious the situation is. That's why we need your help. You are the only one who can... The only one who can what? Give you more money that I don't have? Save you from a problem you created by robbing me? Eleanor, please. I got up from my chair and walked toward the wisteria vines. The purple flowers looked brighter under the morning sun, like small flames of hope amidst all this darkness. Tiffany, for years you two have treated me like I was stupid, as if I understood nothing of the modern world. As if my only function was to be the convenient grandmother who watches the child when you want to travel, or the source of easy cash when you need to finance your luxuries. That's not true. Of course it's true. I turned toward her with all the accumulated fury of years of humiliation. How many times did Rob tell me I didn't understand investments? How many times did you treat me like hired help at family gatherings? How many times did you laugh at me in front of your friends? Tiffany didn't answer because she had no answer. Everything I had said was true, and we both knew it. Now it turns out you need the ignorant old woman to save you. How convenient. Eleanor, if you help us this time, I swear everything will change. Rob will learn from his mistakes. He'll pay back everything that... No. My voice came out firm, definitive. I am not going to help you. How can you be so cruel? I'm not cruel, Tiffany. I'm realistic. If I save you this time, the next time will be worse. And the time after that, even worse. Rob will never learn if there's always someone to rescue him from his stupidity. But they're going to hurt us. Then maybe it's time you talk to the police instead of asking for money from an old woman who has nothing left to steal. Tiffany abruptly stood up, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up cheeks. If anything happens to us, it will be your fault. No, Tiffany. If anything happens to you, it will be Rob's fault for making such stupid decisions, and yours for allowing him. She left without saying goodbye, but before getting into her car, she turned back one last time. "This isn't over, Eleanor." "No," I replied. "I suppose not." For the next 2 weeks, my house became a besieged fortress. Rob and Tiffany showed up at all hours, sometimes together, sometimes separately, always with new strategies to make me change my mind. First, they tried pleading. Rob arrived one morning with grocery store flowers and rehearsed tears, asking for forgiveness from the bottom of his heart, and promising that this time he really would change. When I asked him how he planned to pay back the $45,000 he had stolen from me, he had no answer. Then they tried religious manipulation. They brought Father Michael from St. Anthony's Parish, a young priest who didn't know me, to talk about Christian forgiveness and the importance of family. I showed the father all the fraud documents and explained the complete situation. He left my house very quietly and never returned. Next came the phase of subtle threats. Tiffany appeared with legal counsel friends, who explained that reporting a son could be considered a rupture of family harmony and that a judge might interpret it as evidence of mental decline. I showed them the medical reports from Dr. Mendoza and Dr. Ramirez. The lawyers also left very quietly. But the strategy that hurt me the most was when they used Vivian. One Saturday morning, while watering the plants on the patio, I heard a familiar little voice from the other side of the door. "Grandma! Grandma, it's me!" I quickly opened the door, and there was my granddaughter, with her honey-colored eyes full of tears and her arms outstretched toward me. I hugged her with all the strength I had, inhaling the scent of baby shampoo in her hair. "Sweetheart, how are you? I missed you so much." "I missed you too, Grandma. Why can't I come see you anymore?" I looked up and saw Rob standing next to his car, arms crossed and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He had used his own daughter as emotional bait. "Vivi can stay with you for a while," he said from the sidewalk. "But first you and I need to talk." I knew it was a trap, but I couldn't deny myself the sight of my granddaughter. I brought her inside and prepared her a glass of iced tea while Rob settled into the living room as if he owned the place. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened," he began in that soft voice he used when he wanted to manipulate me. "And you're right. I messed up. I used your money without properly asking permission." "Properly?" The word stuck in my throat. "Rob, you didn't ask me for permission in any way. You robbed me." Okay. You're right. It was theft. I accept that." Vivian lifted her head from her iced tea glass, confused to hear her dad admit something so serious. "The point is," Rob continued, "that I'm ready to make things right, to give you back all your money." "All my money? $45,000? "Exactly. All of it." "And how do you plan to get that amount?" "I have a plan. A real business this time. No risky investments or gambling. A solid, traditional business." I pulled out a notebook and a pen from the coffee table. "Explain it to me." Rob became animated when he saw that I seemed interested. "Okay, look. A partner of mine has contacts overseas, electronics importation, cell phones, tablets, laptops, all legal, all with the proper paperwork. How much money do you need to start?" "I only need $20,000 for the first import shipment. With that merchandise, in 2 months I can generate a 200% profit. I'll pay you back your $45,000 and still have money left over for the next purchase." $20,000. Less than half of what he had stolen from me, for a business that promised a 200% profit in 2 months. It was exactly the same kind of fantasy story he had told me before robbing me. "And where am I going to get $20,000, Robert?" "Well, I thought maybe you could get a loan, using the house as collateral." There it was. The real plan. He didn't just want me to withdraw the report so his accounts would be unfrozen. He wanted me to mortgage my house to give him fresh cash that he could also lose in his businesses. "I see," I said, writing numbers in my notebook. "Tell me something. What is this partner of yours called?" "He's called, well, his commercial name is North Imports. And his real name? That's confidential information, Mom. For business security. Do you have a signed contract with him? We are finalizing the legal details. Do you have the import permits? We are processing them. Do you have the merchandise identified? We are evaluating the best options in the market." I closed my notebook and looked him directly in the eyes. "Rob, You have nothing. You don't have a partner. You don't have permits. You don't have a real plan. You just have another nice story to convince me to give you more money. It's not a story. It's a serious business plan. Like the cryptocurrency business plan? Like the tech company stock plan? Like the Phoenix Investments plan? Vivian looked at both of us with those big eyes that seemed to understand more than a 7-year-old should. Mom, this time it's different, I swear. No, Robert. This time I am different. He stood up from his chair in frustration. You know what? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of begging you, pleading with you, treating you with kid gloves. Kid gloves? I laughed bitterly. Is robbing me treating me with kid gloves? I told you I was going to pay you back. And I'm telling you I don't want any more of your promises. I want you to take responsibility for what you did. Fine, he shouted, losing complete control. You want me to take responsibility? Perfect. But when the collectors come, when they hurt us, when they do something to Vivian, I want you to remember that you could have prevented it. Those words were like a slap. He wasn't just emotionally blackmailing me. He was threatening that the consequences of his actions could affect my granddaughter. Are you threatening to hurt your own daughter? No. I'm telling you there are dangerous people waiting to collect. And if we don't pay them, then go to the police, report the threats, seek legal protection. The police can't do anything. These people operate outside the law. And the solution is for me to mortgage my house to pay them? It's the only solution, Tiffany screamed. I slowly rose from my chair with all the dignity I could muster. I walked toward Vivian and took her hand. Vivi, sweetheart, your dad and you are leaving now. Why, Grandma? Because your dad needs to learn to solve his problems without hurting the people he loves. Rob looked at me with a mix of disbelief and hatred I had never seen in his eyes. Fine, Mom. Perfect. But I want you to know that this thing you're doing is irreversible. When everything goes to hell, don't come crying. I won't come crying anywhere, Robert. Because for the first time in my life, I'm going to sleep soundly knowing I am not complicit in your lies. He took Vivian's hand with more force than necessary. My granddaughter looked at me with tears in her eyes. When will I see you again, Grandma? Soon, sweetheart. Very soon. But as I watched the car drive away, I wasn't sure that promise was true. For the first time since this war began, I felt real fear, not for myself, but for Vivian. Because if Rob was telling the truth about the dangerous lenders, my granddaughter could pay the consequences of her father's stupid decisions. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not out of remorse, but because I had started formulating a plan that I never thought I would have to make. If Rob wanted to play dirty, I knew how to play dirty too. The next day, very early, I called Vivian from Mrs. Carmen's phone. I knew Rob checked my phone and didn't want him to know I was in touch with my granddaughter. Grandma? Her little voice sounded small and scared on the other end of the line. Yes, sweetheart. How are you? Are you okay? I'm with the Hernandez grandparents in Naples. Dad and Mom say we're going to stay here until some work problems are sorted out. Vivi, I need you to tell me something very important. Are there strange men asking about your dad? Anyone who makes you feel uncomfortable or scared? Yes, Grandma. Yesterday, 2 big men came to my other grandparents' house. They talked to Grandpa Fernando, and he got really nervous. Then he told me we were going on a trip for a few days. My heart raced. The collectors had already found Tiffany's family. This was more serious than I had thought. Sweetheart, are your parents going with you on that trip? I don't know. Mom cries a lot, and Dad yells on the phone all day. Vivian, listen to me very carefully. If you ever feel danger, if someone scares you or tries to take you somewhere, you run and hide. Do you understand? Yes, Grandma. And if you can, call me at this number. It's Mrs. Carmen's phone. Can you write it down? I dictated the number twice until she confirmed she had memorized it. When I hung up, Mrs. Carmen looked at me worriedly. Eleanor, this is getting very ugly. I know, Carmen. That's why I'm going to do something I never thought I would do. That afternoon, I took the subway to the Federal Task Force office downtown. It was a gray, intimidating building where uniformed officials handled cases that exceeded the capacity of local police. Good morning, I told the receptionist. I want to report threats from illegal lenders against my family. They assigned me to an agent in the Specialized Financial Crimes Unit, a serious man in his 40s named Agent Hayes, who listened attentively as I told him the whole story. "Mrs. Miller," he said after reviewing all the documents I had brought. "The fraud case you already opened with the CFPB serves as background. But for threats from loan sharks, we need more direct evidence." "What kind of evidence?" "Recordings of the threats, text messages, witness testimonies. Something that demonstrates there is indeed coercion against your family. My granddaughter told me that men came asking for my son at her other grandparents' house." "Did you see those men? Do you have the names of the witnesses?" "No, I wasn't present." "Then it's third-party testimony. We need something more solid." I left the office with a digital recorder that Agent Hayes had loaned me and a plan that made me nauseous but was the only way to protect Vivian. That night, I called Rob from my cell phone. "Mom? Rob, I've been thinking about what you told me." "Seriously?" "Yes. If there really are dangerous people involved, I don't want anything to happen to Vivian." I heard his breathing quicken on the other end of the line. "Mom, I knew you'd understand. I just need... But first, I want to know all the details. Who these people are, exactly how much you owe them, what they have threatened to do. That's complicated to explain over the phone. Then come to my house tomorrow. Bring Tiffany. We'll all talk like adults." "Are you really going to help us?" "I'm going to hear what you have to say." The next day, Rob and Tiffany arrived promptly at 2 p.m. She had deep dark circles under her eyes, and he hadn't shaved in days. They looked like what they were, desperate people cornered by their own decisions. I discreetly activated the recorder in my apron pocket and served them coffee. "All right," I said. "Tell me exactly what trouble you're in." Rob looked at Tiffany as if asking permission to speak. "Mom, it all started 8 months ago. There was an investment opportunity in the U.S., a high-yield fund that managed oil contracts. And you needed money to get in?" "Yes. The minimum investment was $500,000. $500,000. I repeated the figure slowly. "Exactly. But the projected profits were incredible. 30% monthly guaranteed." 30% monthly? Even I knew that was impossible. "And where were you going to get $500,000? "Well, we had some savings, plus what we took from your account." "What you stole from my account?" "Yes, that. But even so, it wasn't enough." So Tiffany knew some private investors who lent money for these kinds of opportunities. "Private investors?" "People with a lot of capital who lend money at high but quick rates," Tiffany explained. "They are successful entrepreneurs looking to diversify their investments." "Well, what are these entrepreneurs called?" "Well, the main one is named Sebastian Dominguez. He has businesses in Miami and Vegas." "And he lent you the $500,000? "Not all of it. He put in $350,000. We put in $150,000 with your savings and other smaller loans." "And what happened to the investment?" Rob lowered his head. "At first, everything was perfect. The first 2 months we received the payments on time. 30% every month, just as they promised. But in the third month, the company in the U.S. said there were temporary problems with the oil contracts, that payments would be delayed a few weeks. And after that? Then they disappeared. The company, the contacts, everything. We lost the $500,000. Tiffany wiped away tears with a tissue. "Eleanor, Sebastian is not the type of person who accepts losing his money. His collection methods are aggressive. What have they threatened to do?" "At first it was just calls. Reminders that we had a commitment to fulfill," Rob said. "But when we couldn't make the first monthly payment, the visits started." "What kind of visits?" "Men who came to my office asking for me. Who stood at the entrance of our condo building. Who followed Tiffany when she went to the grocery store." "Did they threaten you directly?" "Sebastian called me a week ago," Rob continued, his voice trembling. "He told me that if I didn't pay him the $350,000 plus interest in 15 days, he was going to collect in other ways." "What did he mean by that?" "That he knew where Tiffany's parents lived, that he knew where Vivian went to school, that he knew where you lived." A shiver ran down my spine. Not only had they put their own lives in danger with their greed, they had put me in danger too. "And how much money do you need to pay him?" $400,000. The original $350,000 plus $50,000 in interest. $400,000? The figure was so absurd I almost laughed. "And how do you expect me to help you with that amount?" "Mom, if you mortgage the house, If you sell the lot in the back, if I sell everything I own, maybe I can raise $50,000. You need $400,000. But it would be a start. We could negotiate with Sebastian. Make a payment plan. A payment plan? The question came out with more sarcasm than I intended. Do you seriously think a loan shark who threatens families will accept a payment plan? It's our only option, Tiffany cried out. If we don't do something, they're going to kill us. No, Tiffany. It's not your only option. They both looked at me expectantly. Your only option is to go to the police, report the threats, and ask for legal protection. We already told you the police can't do anything. How do you know if you've never tried? Because Sebastian has contacts. Because he's more powerful than you think. Maybe, I said, discreetly turning off the recorder. But I am not going to mortgage my house to pay off a criminal. Then they're going to kill us, Tiffany sobbed. No, I replied with a calm I didn't feel. You'll have to find another solution. They left my house shouting and crying, but I had already obtained what I needed. A complete recording where they admitted the fraud, explained their situation with illegal lenders, and provided specific names and details. The next day, I returned to Agent Hayes. This time, he had all the evidence he needed to act. Agent Hayes listened to the complete recording while taking notes on his computer. When he finished, he looked at me with an expression that mixed respect and concern. Mrs. Miller, this is exactly what we needed. Your son and daughter-in-law have confessed to fraud, money laundering, and ties to illegal lenders. But it also confirms that you and your granddaughter are in real danger. What does that mean? It means we are going to act immediately. But it also means we need to put you under protection while we investigate this Sebastian Dominguez. Protection? Like a witness protection program? Something like that. We will also need your granddaughter to be moved to a safe location until we arrest those responsible. Can you get Vivian out of Naples without her parents realizing it? We work with social services for these cases. If there are credible threats against a minor, we have the authority to act. That afternoon, while waiting in my house for the police to coordinate the operation, I received a call that chilled my blood. Mrs. Eleanor Miller. The voice was gravelly, authoritative with a southern drawl. Yes, who is calling? My name is Sebastian Dominguez. I believe you know my debtor, Robert Miller. My mouth immediately went dry. It was him, the loan shark who had threatened my family. What do you want? I want to talk to you, ma'am. Your son told me you are a sensible woman, one who understands when there are serious problems to solve. I have nothing to do with my son's debts. Ah, but you do have something to do with it, because it turns out your son used your money to invest in our business. That makes you an involuntary partner. That's ridiculous. He stole that money from me. Maybe so, ma'am. But the money came to us as part of Robert's investment. And now that the business went south, all investors must answer. Mr. Dominguez, my son lost your money in a scam. That is not my problem. The laugh that followed was cold, calculated. Mrs. Eleanor, it seems to me you don't understand the seriousness of the situation. Your son owes me $400,000. Real money that I lent in good faith for a legitimate business. Legitimate? Lending money with threats is legitimate? I have never threatened anyone, ma'am. I simply explain the natural consequences of not fulfilling financial commitments. And what are those consequences? Well, sometimes people have accidents, especially older people who are frailer, and small children who don't know how to take care of themselves. The threat was crystal clear. He was telling me that if I didn't pay Rob's debt, something bad could happen to Vivian and me. Mr. Dominguez, I don't have $400,000. No, but you have a house. You have property. You have ways to get money if you really want to protect your family. And if I refuse? Mrs. Eleanor, I hope you don't refuse. It would be very sad for a grandmother who has worked so hard all her life to end up having problems in her golden years. The call cut off, but the message was clear. He wasn't just threatening Rob and Tiffany. He was threatening me directly. I immediately called Agent Hayes. Commander, I just received a call from Sebastian Dominguez. What? How did he get your number? I don't know, but he threatened me directly. He said if I don't pay my son's debt, something bad could happen to my granddaughter and me. Mrs. Miller, Leave your house immediately. Go to a public place, a mall, a police station. We will pick you up in an hour. And Vivian? We already sent a team to Naples. They will transfer her to a safe shelter tonight. I grabbed a bag with essentials and left my house without looking back. Mrs. Carmen saw me running out and yelled from her window. Eleanor, what's wrong? Carmen, if anyone comes asking for me, tell them you don't know where I am. But Eleanor, and if you see strange men on the street, call the police immediately. I got into the first taxi that passed and told the driver to take me to the local shopping center. Throughout the ride, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it would jump out of my chest. At the mall, I sat in the second-floor coffee shop, at a table from where I could see all the entrances and exits. I ordered a coffee that I couldn't drink because my hands were trembling so much it spilled before reaching my mouth. 40 minutes later, 2 plainclothes agents arrived. A young man and woman who sat at my table as if they were my grandchildren. Mrs. Miller, I'm Agent Lopez. This is Agent Ruiz. Agent Hayes sent us for you. Is Vivian safe? Your granddaughter is under police protection. We removed her from Naples 2 hours ago. She's in a safe location. And my children? They are also under surveillance, but for different reasons. They are part of the investigation. They took me to a safe house in a secure downtown neighborhood. It was a modest but comfortable place, with reinforced windows and security cameras. There, I met Attorney Morales, a prosecutor specializing in organized crime. Mrs. Miller, what is happening is bigger than we imagined. Sebastian Dominguez is not just a loan shark. He is the head of a money laundering network operating across multiple states. And is my son involved with these people? Your son is what we call a small fish, a scam victim who is used to launder illicit money. But now that he lost the money, he became a problem they need to solve. What does that mean? It means Dominguez doesn't just want his money back. He wants to make an example of your son so other debtors don't dare to defraud him. But Rob didn't defraud him on purpose? It doesn't matter. To Dominguez, intent is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is that he lost $350,000, and someone has to pay. And what happens now? Now we have enough evidence to arrest the entire network. But we need you to testify about your son's fraud and the threats you received. Does that mean I'll have to testify against Robert? It means you'll have to tell the truth about what he did to you. That night, in the safe house, I couldn't sleep. Not out of fear, but from a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Relief because finally someone was going to deliver justice. Sadness because that justice involved seeing my own son arrested and prosecuted as a criminal. At 6 in the morning, my cell phone rang. It was a text message from Rob. Mom, please answer. Sebastian says he talked to you. He says if we don't get the money in 24 hours, it will be too late for everyone. Please, please help us. I promise this time will be different. I showed the message to Agent Ruiz, who was on duty that night. Should I answer him? Of course. But you will say exactly what we tell you to say. She dictated the response word for word. Rob, I can't help you anymore. Seek legal aid. Report the threats. It's the only way. The response came immediately. You can't abandon us like this. We're your family. A family that robbed me. I typed on my own. Mom, please. Think about Vivian. I am thinking about her. That's why I'm not going to mortgage my house to pay off criminals. If you don't help us, they'll hurt the girl. That last threat was the final straw. My own son was using his daughter to emotionally blackmail me, threatening to allow her to be harmed if I didn't pay his debts. Agent Ruiz, I said, I am ready to testify against my son. Are you sure, ma'am? Completely sure. It's time Robert learned that actions have consequences. At 8 a.m., the police operation began simultaneously in 5 different locations. They arrested Sebastian Dominguez at his Miami office, his 2 main lieutenants at their homes, and Rob and Tiffany at the hotel where they had been hiding. The war was over, but my true freedom was just beginning. 3 days after the operation, they allowed me to see Vivian at the social services office. She had been in a temporary home with a family specializing in protecting children in risk situations. But when she saw me enter the visiting room, she ran toward me as if she hadn't seen me in years. Grandma, I was so scared. I hugged her with all the strength I had, breathing in the scent of her hair and feeling her tremble in my arms. She looked smaller, more fragile than before. as if the events of the last few weeks had stolen some of her childhood innocence. "It's all over now, sweetheart. You are safe. Where are my parents?" It was the question I had been dreading. How do you explain to a 7-year-old girl that her parents are arrested? How do you tell her that her father robbed his own grandmother and got involved with criminals? "Your parents had to resolve some issues with the police," I told her as gently as possible. "They will be busy for a while. Problems like the bad men who came to Grandpa Fernando's house?" "Something like that, my love." "And am I going to stay with you?" "If you want to, yes." Her eyes lit up for the first time since I had seen her. "I do. Can we go back to your house? To have iced tea and see the wisteria?" "Soon, sweetheart. Very soon." The social worker supervising the visit, a young woman named Counselor Perez, explained afterward that the temporary custody process would take a few weeks. They had to evaluate that my house was a safe environment, that I had the necessary resources to care for a child, and that I was truly the best option for Vivian. "Mrs. Miller, we understand you are the grandmother and clearly have a very close relationship with the minor, but we also have to consider your age and your economic resources." "Is my age a problem?" "It's not a problem, but it is a factor. Caring for a 7-year-old requires energy and resources that can be challenging for a 68-year-old. I have cared for Vivian many times. I know her routines, her needs, her fears. We know, and that counts heavily in your favor. But we also have to ensure that you can provide long-term financial stability for the child." There was the real problem. My $180 weekly pension barely covered my own needs. How was I going to convince social services that I could support a child on that budget? That afternoon, in the safe house, I confided my concern to Attorney Morales. "Mrs. Miller, there's something we hadn't told you. As part of the investigation, we have been able to trace some of the assets your son bought with the stolen money." "What kind of assets?" "A car, some electronic equipment, minor investments that he didn't lose in the scam. The total value is approximately $25,000. "And what does that mean?" "It means that as part of the restitution for the harm, you have the right to recover those assets or their cash value. $25,000. It wasn't even half of what Rob had stolen from me, but it was enough to demonstrate that I had resources to care for Vivian for a few years." "And how long will that process take? With the arrests already made? And the evidence we have, probably 2 or 3 months. And in the meantime? In the meantime, we can work with social services to expedite the temporary custody process. Your granddaughter clearly prefers you over any other option." The next day, they allowed me to return home, with discreet police protection. Mrs. Carmen greeted me with tears in her eyes and a pot of chicken soup she had been preparing since she heard of my return. "Eleanor, what a scare you gave me. These days have been terrible. Some men came asking for you, but I told them I didn't know anything." "What kind of men?" "Big men, with expensive suits but ugly faces. They stood on the corner for about an hour, watching your house." "And then what happened?" "Then the police arrived and took them away. Mrs. Esperanza says they were the bad ones who got arrested. My house looked exactly the same as when I had left it, but it felt different. More empty, but also cleaner. As if it had been freed from negative energy it had been carrying for years. That night, alone in my bed after weeks of sleeping in strange places, I could finally process everything that had happened. My son was in jail. My granddaughter was in state custody. My money was gone forever. But for the first time in decades, I felt free. A week later, Counselor Perez summoned me to her offices to discuss Vivian's custody. "Mrs. Miller, we have completed the evaluation of your situation. Your house is safe and appropriate for a minor. Your relationship with Vivian is clearly very strong, and we have verified that you will receive financial compensation that will improve your capacity to provide for the child." "Does that mean?" "It means we are going to grant you temporary custody of Vivian while her parents' legal situation is resolved. And what will happen to Robert and Tiffany? That depends on the judicial process. But considering the evidence, they will probably face between 5 and 10 years in prison. 5 to 10 years. Vivian would grow up with me. She would go from being a 7-year-old girl to a 17-year-old teenager, perhaps without her parents present in her daily life. May I ask you something, Counselor?" "Of course. Do you think I made the right decision? Reporting my own son? Counselor Perez looked at me with an expression that blended professionalism and humanity. Mrs. Miller, in my work I have seen families destroyed by secrets, by silent complicity, by parents who protect adult children from the consequences of their actions. What you did was extremely brave. It doesn't feel brave. It feels like betrayal. Betrayal toward whom? Toward the son who robbed you? Toward the man who endangered his own daughter? Or betrayal toward the woman you were all your life, who accepted abuse because she believed that was maternal love? Her words hit me like slaps of reality. For 68 years, I had confused love with submission. I had believed that being a good mother meant allowing myself to be abused. I had thought that protecting my family meant sacrificing myself until I disappeared. Mrs. Miller, you didn't betray your son. Your son betrayed you. And more importantly, he betrayed himself. True parents protect their children. They don't use them as shields to avoid the consequences of their mistakes. 2 weeks later, Vivian officially came home with me. She arrived with a small suitcase containing the clothes she had been wearing in the temporary home, some books the other families had given her, and a drawing she had made of the two of us together in my backyard. Are they not going to take my parents away anymore? They have been taken away, sweetheart. They are going to be in a place where they have to learn to make better decisions. Like a punishment? Like a consequence. When people do bad things, they have to face the consequences so they can learn. And are we going to be okay alone? We are going to be perfect alone. That night, as Vivian slept in the bed that had been Rob's when he was a child, I sat on the patio under my mother's wisteria. The purple flowers glowed under the full moonlight, like small stars that had decided to grow on Earth instead of staying in the sky. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't have to worry about Rob's demands, his empty promises, his fabricated financial emergencies. I didn't have to count my pennies to see if I could give him money I didn't have. I didn't have to listen to his stories about investment opportunities that always ended up being elegant ways to rob me. I had my granddaughter, my house, my recovered dignity, and something I had lost so long ago that I had forgotten it existed: peace. The transformation had begun.